Hi guys, and welcome to the benchmarking of a GTX 1080 with Armand's Tech Talk. This is, of course, the second benchmarking video I'm trying to put together. So we're using a GTX 1080. We're going to go over the same slew of games that I did with the GTX 690. So the GTX 1080 was shipped earlier this year, May 2016, by NVIDIA. It has 2,560 CUDA cores with 180 watt TDP, 75 watts coming from the PCIe power on the board, and then another 105 coming from the 8-pin power connector. It has a 10,000 megahertz effective clock speed. You have 8 gigs of GDDR5X on the board, and it has a clock. The chip itself has a clock speed of 1.63 gigahertz. 1.65 gigahertz base and 1.73 gigahertz boost. That's roughly 1655 megahertz and then 1733 megahertz at the boost clock. So going over into options here before we get started, you can see the display. 1080, 3840 by 2160. So, as some people call it 4K or UHD. Of course, the actual resolution for 4K is 4096 by 2160. That I believe is the cinema aspect ratio. 60 hertz, because that's the maximum refresh of the monitor. We're going to use SMAA, which is a step up from FXAA. Just to kind of show you what the card can do, this is a little more demanding. There are other options, as you can see here, up to 4x SSAA, but by some of the results I have seen previously, doesn't look like the 1080 is quite capable of pushing 30 with that. And I would like you guys to at least see what it can do with a slightly more advanced anti-aliasing. If we want to burn the card straight to the ground, I can do another review with just basically maxing everything out, but that's the only thing that's really kind of put down slightly. There is no resolution modifier, as you can see. It's completely grayed out. So let's go over to graphics. As you can see, everything here, very high, 16x, that's as high as that'll go. High. That can go to very high. That can go to very high. Let's see. We can do VXAO, although I am slightly afraid that will crash the card if I do. So we are about as high as it's going to get. Go back. We're going to go back, and we're going to start the benchmarks. And let's cross our fingers that turning VXAO on will not crash this. I think last time I attempted to do this, it completely froze the system. So, of course, Rise of the Tomb Raider was released holiday of 2015 for the Xbox One. It came out January or February timeframe of 2016, and is scheduled release for PS4 later this year. The game, of course, is the sequel to the Tomb Raider reboot, which was released in 2015, and it's a very technically amazing game by everything I can see. And especially at 4K, it's just spectacular. So, we're halfway through the benches here. We've got one more to go. And yeah, I mean, these are slightly synthetic versus an actual playthrough bench, but this kind of gives us a baseline, as I do have intention to get my hands on a Titan X 2016 Pascal edition, um, and we can do a comparison. Of course, everything's running at stock clock. So, as you can see here, our averages in the Mount Peak 3422, Syria 2732, and then the Geothermal Valley 2663. I can tell you right now that a lot of these losses, because I did run this a little while ago, you saw the two settings that I changed earlier from high to very high. Turning those two settings down to high will... Well, I turned three settings. I turned 2 down to high, and I turned 2 up to very high, and I turned HBAO plus up to VXAO. So by changing those three settings in this video that you saw, please go back to that time so you know which settings I'm talking about, will actually net you an additional 10 frames because I was running at about 40 frames, and at least with the in-game benchmark here, I couldn't see much of a difference. But if you have a 1080, definitely go around and play with that. As I said, I don't think you'll see much of a quality difference, but of course that is very subjective. So that's kind of it for the Rise of the Tomb Raider. The next game I'm gonna get into is The Witcher 3, just so we can see how that runs on the 1080. I will see you guys in just a second. Hi guys, and so we're in The Witcher 3. This is going to be a slightly quicker portion to this video. I do want to just kind of show this off fairly quickly. The Fraps isn't on, but I did run this earlier. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was because of Fraps or what the issue was. It didn't necessarily get picked up. Actually, I will attempt here to run one thing just to see if it'll do it. And that is going to be the FPS counter. Alright, so you should be able to see an FPS counter in the lower left-hand portion of the video now. So 4K, unlimited, as you can see. The only thing that's really set to low is Hairworks. We're going to shove this stuff up to Ultra. Heading over into post-processing, it's all on, it's HBAO, it's high, and so with that being said, let's get into the game. And of course, this is one of those instances where, you can't, if you're in that portion of the game, you can't quite skip it. It's just one of those deals. So, as you can see down here at the bottom, 40 frames, 34, 30, and in the version of this that I had attempted to run earlier, in the version of this I attempted to run earlier, it was one of those things where I wanted it to work and it just did not. It just didn't capture the video. So I am stuck at a crawling pace for whatever reason. But the game does look beautiful. The game does look beautiful. I mean, the texturing on the armor, the sword. I mean, we can get right in there. I mean, even looking at the Witcher pendant, I think I just saw a star streak across the sky. So once again, I mean, it is a wonderful game. Should get the horse here somewhere. Where are you, Roach? Oh, there he is. There we go. And, as I'm moving through the countryside faster here. Oh, that's not the bridge for that. Just so you guys can kind of get a view of the inside. And I did take a look at different resolutions. I mean, if you go down to 2560 by 1440, you do get above 60 at the high settings. I mean, if you were to up it a little bit and use all ultra settings, you drop about 10 frames, which is a considerable amount, but it's not. It's still playable. So I mean, I guess I would. I guess I wouldn't say that's a deal breaker. It'll once again be interesting to see how the Titan X compares when it comes time. But anyway, guys, as I said, real quickly, that is The Witcher 3, and we will be moving on to Ashes of the Singularity. Alright, guys, now we're going to get into Ashes of the Singularity. I had to go in and set this thing up. I was going to try and do a hot switch and show you options as I was switching them, but OBS and getting in and out of programs doesn't seem to get along very well. So I went in. We're gonna do a burn down session on this card here. So as we go into the benchmark, we can see that it's DX11, 2840 by 2160 at full screen. Everything is on high. I also believe we can go back and check the options for this real quick. So video. We've got temporal AA on, we've got texture quality at high, we've got shadows at high, we've got terrain shading at ultra. There is not an ultra option for, there is one for shadow quality. Don't know if that's going to make me reset again. Yeah, of course it is. I'm not going to reset, I'm going to leave that at high. And we're going to move forward with the benchmarks here. You did notice probably that I have both MSAA and temporal AA on. I'm not sure how that was going to affect this, but we're gonna test it out anyway here. So as you can see, here are the options, and let's go ahead and run the test. Now, this is a DX12 game. As I said, for the purposes of this video, I am not going to run the DX12 version of this because NVIDIA cards just don't handle that quite as well. I do love the way this game looks. I mean, even just the barren, snowy planet. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, whether whether you think the snow is accurately paced over everything as AMD showed, I mean, just look at the different lighting on the geometry. I mean, and how just like little curves and bumps can create shadows. Of course, the game is testing against small, medium, and heavy scale battles with lots of units moving across the screen. Um, this is, of course, very synonymous with Supreme Commander, although this is much prettier than Supreme Commander ever was. It is kind of nice to note they do still make games like this. I also believe there is another game very similar to this called Planetary Annihilation. I do plan on taking a look at that and seeing if that would also be suitable for using as a benchmark. So we are about a little more than halfway through this. So what I think I'm going to do here is just be quiet for a few minutes, and I'm going to let you guys enjoy the carnage. Alright, so we've finished up. We can definitely see that the overhead on the card is fairly high here, but the total score, along with the I was gonna say the total score is actually pretty good. It stays pretty consistent here. 34, 29, 23 in the heaviest of battles. Of course, our average being 28. That 23, of course, kind of pulls us down. But the card can, I mean, if you kind of keep the heavy battles to a minimum, you really shouldn't see too much of a frame drop. You should stay around that 30 FPS sweet spot in games like this. 60 is not really, I mean, it's nice, but it's not a necessity. So, I mean, you can kind of, and that's personal preference. I mean, you can take it however you want to. That's just my opinion. I could play one of these at, of course, at 30 frames. And of course, here we go. We get into the breakdown here. It's of course weighting our frame rate, and we just kind of scroll down through the different types of shots and how the frame rate did in them. Because the card, of course, is rendering different things while it's doing. While it's doing the processing. So different angles, different screens will definitely affect rendering and geometry in different ways and put more load on the card. So I'm just trying to roll down these slowly just to kind of show you the breakdown. Feel free, of course, to pause this and take a look. And tell me what you think with the different shots and whether or not 150 megahertz clock do you think would really boost us up that much. So that's Ashes of the Singularity. The last game that I am going to address with this video is going to be Doom, of course the 2016 game, which is, in my estimation, spectacular. But we will get into that in just a moment, and I will see you guys there. Alright guys, so we're going to get into Doom here. Of course, going to do two different segments of Doom. I'm still fairly early in the game. I haven't had a chance to beat it, but I do have high opinions of the game. However, that's not why we're here. We're benchmarking the GTX 1080. So, the Doom games, whether it was Doom 3 or the original Doom, they've always been great games. This is going more back in the vein of the original Doom, being a first-person shooter, and really just being a shooter. It was Doom 3 that kind of took it into the realm of let's make it creepy, let's make it a scare fest. So I'm kind of glad to see this classic Doom, although I enjoyed Doom 3 as well. So we can do a continue and we can do a mission select. So I'm going to start with a continue so you can kind of see what indoors looks like here first. But before we do any of that, here's our settings. 16:9 aspect ratio, 4K of course, VSync is off because hey, we don't want to limit those frames. We're going to turn this down to SMAA, and we're going to kind of keep a little more consistency with some of the other games that we've done. I could also do the temporal, but I could do the temporal, but I think currently this SMAA is pretty much the way to go. So we have our motion blur, of course, is at high. Of course, we want to keep those differences. And here we are in advanced. So I'm going to do this in OpenGL. And as you can see, everything else is at high, ultra, or nightmare. You can see, of course, up in the upper right-hand portion of the screen, you've got the OpenGL. You have the OpenGL telling you basically what we're running. It's giving you the driver. It's giving you the utilizations of CPU, GPU, and of course the frame rate. So definitely, and it does change awfully quickly. I will say that ahead of time. I am recording this with OBS, and if I were to attempt to do any kind of overlay with that, it might have problems. So for the purposes of this video, I mean, if you really kind of want to see what the frame rate is doing, just keep an eye on that ticker on the side. So, as I said, we are going to start here with... we're going to start here by going indoors, and we're going to take out some enemies here and hopefully not die in the process. And it's always nice to, of course, start with the chainsaw, because that's a classic. I mean, that gives you a little bit of that Gears of War feeling. Oh. And that's, that's fairly brutal. Let's pick up all that health. And we got one bad guy left down here. Hey, and we've cleared the bad guys. I'm kind of... Well, we can see that they've gone in there. Of course, the only way in there is to go up here. Oh. Oh. Well, that wasn't nice. I definitely wasn't expecting that to happen. As I said, I haven't quite played this. I haven't quite played this to the point where I am ultimately familiar with these levels, but I am definitely looking about finishing going through this. So. Man, that's rough. Oh. 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 Oh, getting a little bit stuck here. Oh, and I died. Alright, so, I mean, that kind of gives you guys a brief tour of what this game is all about, and you get to see me clobbered in the face, which that's great. Oh, whoops. Alright, I guess we're going to try this one more time. That was not the plan here, but I can go for it if you can. Oh, yeah. Brutal. Just brutal. Alright, so let's get back down here. We're going to open that up. I'm going to get back up here. Well, that sounds bad. All right. The Doom guy, what can I say? He's a monster. And, just kind of one other big thing I definitely want to say about Doom here is the fact that the game is very much exploration based. All right. Oh. Oh. And we're gonna kind of run here. And I'm gonna say trying to play the game here. Try not to get too lost while I go through this, but oh, our health is low. Got to be careful. Oh, I don't think I'm going to make this. That's a good way to go about killing some guy. I mean, and so one thing I can definitely see by looking up here at the just kind of glancing at the frame rate counter is SMAA is definitely more intensive than TXAA. And how I can tell that is basically, oh boy. I can tell that by the fact that so I can tell that by the fact that when I've played this game before with TSAA on, it has actually done more consistently in the 60s. Although at this point we are not looking at a huge difference, but I mean a difference all the same. Well, did I miss something here? Oh no, it's just an awfully slow elevator. Okay, and so we're going down, or we're going up, I guess. I don't know where we're going. We're going somewhere. I think we're out of gas for the chainsaw. But we're going to follow the hologram here. Well, I think we found our key card. Whoa, hello. Now, before I head down there, let's do a little more exploring here. Cuz hey, finding these robots is always a good idea. So, and this will be beautiful. So apparently I've fully modded the shotgun. It should be a fairly interesting kill here when I come up against the next guy. So All right. Just kind of looking around. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh. All right. Heavy assault rifle. We're starting to get nice and loaded up here. There's no zoom on this like there is with the other one, but let's get our armor in place here. Look at our health meter. Get all charged up here. Of course, I guess you didn't need to pull it from a dead corpse's hands. It looks like there's some rifles sitting here on the wall. But I mean, hey, it's the Doom guy. What can I say? Looks like we're going back outside, so I won't need to actually go through and play 2 different levels here for you guys to see. We'll be able to do this right on one. Alright, I mean, that's different. Not quite what I was expecting with a shotgun. Oh, man, I got taken out from behind. But, alright guys, so that gives you a good view of Doom. I think I've kind of decided I'm going to do one more bonus game. It's going to be a slightly older game, but it's one of my favorites. I'm just kind of curious to see how the card will handle the game at 4K. So, your one bonus game today, Batman Arkham City. I will see you guys. Alright guys, so we're going into Batman Arkham City. It is the Game of the Year edition here. Before I get started here, I just want to go through a little bit of discussion on what the settings are. So 3840 by 2160, VSync is off. It's 8x MSAA. We are using the DirectX 11 features MVSS and HBAO. Of course, that's of kind of your brightness, your darkness. Tessellation I put on high. Detail level is at extreme. Dynamic shadows are on. I don't know. Yeah, it's either yes or no. Motion blur is on. Distortion is on. Lens flare, of course, is on. Light shafts are on. Reflections are on. Ambient occlusion, of course, is on. And just to test the card, just to see how far we can push it on this older game, hardware acceleration is on high. So with that being said, we're going to say okay here, and you should start seeing video here in just a moment. Yes, we want to allow this thing access, and here we go. So Unreal Technology, of course, physics, WB Games, hey, everybody loves WB, except for that garbage they made in Arkham Knight. But nobody's talking about that. So, being that this was a NVIDIA sponsored game, you know, this should run fairly well. Let's see here. Yeah, I've got a lot of guiltiness with my games. I have actually developed a list, which I'm gonna go through, and I'm gonna start playing these. I actually will probably include some of them here in videos. Let's see. So we're gonna test the PC's performance here with all the settings that I explained earlier. 46, 45. I mean, at the very highest of settings. Now, mind you, this is going through here at 4K. This is actually kind of impressive. It'll be interesting to see how the Titan X Pascal stands up to this. And it also, once again, goes to prove and goes to show that older games, of course, can be a challenge to a GPU even at 4K. So, the benchmark is completed. Minimum was 22 frames, the maximum was 22 frames, our average was 48. So even in a game that is, several years old, if you put it in at 4K and you basically crank it all straight to the max, we could still see some we can still see some room for improvement. So definitely not an unplayable state, but definitely a very challenging one, to say the least. So that was the one bonus game that I wanted to add. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. And of course, as always, I am eager for suggestions, questions, and I definitely, once again, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you all in the next video.